Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher Panayiotou, certified financial planning professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And on today's episode, we are going to get into solutions to help Americans struggling with debt. But before we do that, as always, I got a free tip of the week for you. The free advice of the day: understand the three main financial statements. Now, what do I mean by that? There's three statements in the world of business. There's a balance sheet, there's something called the income statement, and the cash flow statement. The balance sheet shows you what a company is worth. The income statement shows how much money the company makes. And the cash flow statement, which is relatively new in the grand scheme of things, shows you where the money is coming from as far as what the company is making. Because a company could actually invest, okay? Now, I'm not saying you need to become this amazing investment analyst. In fact, far from it. But if you understand the bare bone basics of these three statements, you will instantly become 10 times more valuable, especially if you run a business. So, with that free tip of the week, we are going to get into my favorite top solutions for Americans that are struggling with debt. So the first one I want you to go over is analyze your situation. And by analyzing your situation, I've got a little to-do for you. I want you to write down 2 columns on a piece of paper. And once you've done that, one column is going to be titled fixed expenses. The other one is going to be variable expenses. After you do that, I want you to write down all of your fixed expenses. You can't get around them: taxes, legally, food, water, rent, mortgage, if you own a home. And then write down all of the variable expenses, okay? Which, yes, I would consider Netflix, Amazon purchases, eating out more than one should. So once you've done this, and by the way, I would first just write down like what they are, and then I would put the numbers, okay? Just because it makes it easier to do. Just trust me on that, okay? But once you've done that, immediately you're going to figure out right off the bat where you can easily decrease your spending. And it's going to be in the variable expenses. Because again, the fixed expenses, you really cannot control those, which is why they're fixed. Excuse me. So for you, by decreasing your variable expenses every month, you're going to want to take that extra money per month that was going to inappropriate uses, and then you're going to throw those dollars at your highest interest rate debt. And once you're done with that debt, you're going to take that cash flow on top of everything else that we talked about, and you're going to snowball it into the next highest interest rate until the debts are gone. Now, in previous episodes, okay, because a lot of you devout listeners are going, this kind of contradicts what the Cap and Capitalize has said in the past. Yes, it does. In previous episodes, I have mentioned that once you have debts below 6%, you could start investing that money into a company retirement plan, an individual retirement account, an investment account, whatever. But what is the topic of today's episode, excuse me? Solutions to help Americans struggling with debt. If you are truly struggling with debt, you're going to be the exception to this, because most people in that situation, and by the way, don't feel bad about it. Just accept who you are. That is okay. You may not be able to handle that, and that's fine. Keep it simple. That is okay. I have met with people, and for whatever reason, they simply cannot get to that, hey, once I have interest rates below 6%, I want to go and invest that in the long run because the odds of me making more than that rate of return on the debt that I have is really, really high. They can't handle that balancing act and level of prudency within money. And so even though we know in the long run, snowballing all debt, it's actually going to be a foolish thing for most people, because I know from a rate of return standpoint, like, you're going to lose. I would much rather have you be completely debt free and get the basically no excuse on having any debt on your books, like off the table, as opposed to trying to stick to prudency and you just can't handle it. And that's okay. Now, the second solution I want to talk about, even though credit cards are extremely useful, and they can be extremely useful, right? Don't want to make any blanket statements, compliance. If you simply cannot handle that responsibility of a credit card, stick to a debit card or even old school checks or cash. Now, I know that last part is super old school, but some people, they cannot handle it. And there are a variety of reasons why. Maybe it is behavioral. Maybe it is compulsive. Maybe it is, multi-generational. Like, you didn't grow up thinking about all this stuff. And then some of it is just conceptually, you can't get the concept down. Now, for those of you that are listening going, hey, I can manage a credit card. I can do it. Just tell me what to do. This is what I do for our credit cards every month, because, I go in, I pay them off. So we have 3 credit cards. We have 2 personally, my wife and I, and then we have 1 for the business. I go in and pay all of them off at once on the 7th of every month. I think 2 of our personal cards, they're due on like the 12th, and then our business is like due on the 17th. But the reason why I picked the 7th, it's just one day, make it easy. And the reason why I picked 7 is a lucky number. Like, that was literally all I thought of. That is all you really need to understand from a credit card standpoint. And unlike a debit card where, when you spend the money, it's immediately gone from your checking account, or obviously cash or a check. With a credit card, it builds up and then you just pay it off at the 7th, in my case, every month, versus paying it as you go. And then you get points and benefits and cash back and all that fun stuff. But again, if you cannot handle that, you're going to have to stick to the old school method of cash, debit cards, or checks. Because I'll tell you right now, there is nothing more defeating than being in a lot of credit card debt. And then on top of that, let's say that you're spending a debit card and you can't even manage that. And then your debit card transaction is declined, like, while you're shopping, and then you got to return everything and you're really embarrassed about it. We don't want that. Okay. Keep it simple. Number 3, pay off smaller debts first. And again, I am contradicting myself so freaking much in this episode, but I know that. So you don't have to throw that back at me in the comments or DMs or whatever. I know that. Okay. So pipe down. The reason why it contradicts everything that I'm saying is, when it comes to debts, for most people, it has nothing to do with the balance. It has everything to do with the interest rate. Let's use an example. Would you rather earn 4% or 10%? Obviously, you'd rather earn 10%. Now, let me finish the sentence. Would you rather earn 4% on the debt that you're paying down, or would you rather earn 10%, possibly in the long run, from a long-term investment like a stock, real estate, private equity, etc.? People overcomplicate it. They go, well, but I'm paying down debt, or I'm investing, whatever. No, you would rather earn 10, because in our book, Capitalizing the Spread, is something we talk about. If you take, that 4% money to actually go and invest it in 10, you will earn a 6% spread in the long run. That is what the wealthiest people in this world do. You need to understand that. However, back to the contradicting. From a behavioral finance perspective, some people, they just can't handle it. And so from the solution side of things, because again, what is this about? It's about the Americans struggling with debt. For those of you listening in right now, you are struggling with debt. That's why you tuned in, unless you just want to hear my voice, which is not as angelic as I'd like, but I digress. For you, what's going to be really important is getting the easy wins out of the way first in just knowing, oh, one debt is completely gone, even though that interest rate might be super, super small. Who really cares? Because frankly, you got in this position anyway, and I want you to win, even though I know it's not the most optimal. So pay off the smaller debts first. So with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, we got 2 more of my favorite ways to solve the debt crisis that you are experiencing. Then we'll close it out. So stick around.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotou, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to the show. We're going to get right into it. The 4th solution that I'm going to give you to help you get out of struggling with debt is to create an emergency fund. And I know you're thinking, that's not really going to get me out of debt. Well, you're not wrong. However, it will not put you in a further pickle. So an emergency fund for financial health is beyond important. And it's really boring because once you build it up, guess what you do? You let it sit there. And if you have a traditional bank account, savings really aren't paying a whole heck of a lot. If you have an online savings account, you could actually earn some interest anywhere between 4, maybe even 5% as of the recording of this. However, that's beside the point. With an emergency fund, with the emotional health that you have, knowing, oh my gosh, if something ever happened, I have 3 months or up to 6 months of emergency fund set aside. So 3 to 6 months of your expenses set aside if something ever happened. That is incredibly valuable because then at that point, from an emotional standpoint and a behavioral financial perspective, you can take a deep breath and go, okay, now I'm ready for if something ever comes down the pike, something unexpected, I'm okay. Now I can take anything extra and above and beyond that, and I can start paying off these debts, okay? So again, academically, probably not the best idea, but when it comes to the emotional side, which frankly, most people struggling with debt, it is emotional and psychological. It is not the illogical side of things, okay? Because frankly, let's face it, it's probably going to rustle some feathers here, which I am not new to, but chances are you've probably done a lot of illogical things to get into a lot of debt. So we're going to need to get you out of that. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about before we close out this episode is setting up automatic savings and debt payoffs. So this is going to be really key if you're struggling with debt. And I'm actually going to give a shout out to my boy, Nick Hutchison, founder of Book Thinkers. He came on my show a couple of years ago, has become one of my best friends. And one of the things he talked about in that episode, which you're going to want to tune back to, was fantastic. He talked about Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law is a concept that I find fascinating. And it really doesn't have anything to do specifically with finance, but indirectly it has everything to do with finance. So Parkinson's law is this concept of if you have the ability to use it, you will use it. So I'll give an example that's not finance related. So fun little fact about me. I don't drink, don't smoke, never been drunk, buzzed, or high in my life. But if you want to get to the keys to my heart, if you send me snickerdoodle cookies or barbecue sauce, I am king for a day. So I'll tell you right now, if there were, I'm getting a little hungry, snickerdoodle cookies right in front of my computer right now, I would be munching them as I'm recording this episode. And then it would become like a weird ASMR eating video, but we're not going to do that for a number of reasons. Jokes aside, snickerdoodles, if they're there, I'm going to eat it. Barbecue sauce, if it is off to the side at any occasion, I'm going to put barbecue sauce on everything. That is just who I am. That's what I'm about. When it comes to money, for those of you that are struggling with debt, generally speaking, from a psychological perspective, if you have money in your checking account, you are going to spend it. And at this point, because you are struggling with debt, you're going to spend it inappropriately. So by eliminating Parkinson's law, in solving the cure of Parkinson's law, in setting up all of this automation where the money, when the second it hits your checking account, it goes to whatever debt that you have based on everything else that I've talked about in the episode. And you don't even see it. That is going to pay massive, massive dividends for you down the road, because you're living as though you don't necessarily even need any of that money. And then what happens is, going back to what I mentioned earlier in the show, once that debt is paid off, right, you take that and then you apply it to the next one, and just you keep killing Parkinson's law until it's completely obliterated. That, along with everything else I talked about, is the best way for you all listening in that are struggling with debt to get out of it. So that concludes our episode for today. I bid you adieu. I can't wait to see you next week, as always. And until next time, keep capitalizing. Take care. As always, thank you for joining me today. If you have questions about today's episode or any personal finance questions, please reach out to me at Cap and Capitalize on Instagram, Chris at capitalizeyourfinances.com, or via our website, capitalizepodcast.com. If you want more Capitalize Your Finances content, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com and check out our blog, free resources, book, and online course. As always, I'm your host, Christopher Panayiotou, Certified Financial Planning Professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. These materials are provided for general information and educational purposes based upon publicly available information from sources believed to be reliable. The information in these materials may change at any time and without notice. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. Christopher A. Panayiotou is a registered representative with and securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. The people and companies mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Capitalize Your Finances.